guys ready for Fax Machine? All right. Put your hands together for the one, the only Fax Machine and amazing guest.
And welcome. My name is Noah Giberson, and I am 1/3 of Fax Machine, a show by and for people who are curious about everything, but especially the things that make them laugh. In our show, we share fascinating facts that we've discovered and the larger stories behind them, concluding with a pub-style trivia quiz that is, as we like to say, loosely inspired by the theme. Tonight, our theme is political science, and we are joined by three veritable frontrunners, Dr. Lindsey Cormack, Dr. Justin Williams, and Dr. Andrea Jones-Rooy. As well as one lame duck, my co-host, Dr. Emily Costa. Lindsey, you are a political scientist, and as I'm sure you're going to talk about a little later, you wrote a book, How to Raise a Citizen. I'm curious, like, in your research for the book, whether you figured out if there's any point at which you should just bail out. Like you're raising a citizen and they don't seem to be taking it, or they've gone down some sort of right-wing YouTube rabbit hole, and then you just start telling them that like people actually vote on a different day. I'm wondering like what your experience with this whole process has been.
No, I think you can do it all the time at any age. I do have a part that's like if you have someone who you think is an extremist, here's sort of 7 steps, and it ends with like let's go seek counseling.
Wow.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
What's step 1? Am I allowed to ask that?
Yeah, step 1 is like make sure they're still comfortable coming to you and talking about it. Like let them say their weird stuff to you so that they can get it out. Yeah.
You just got to get the poison out. Just like it's similar to like snake bites, I think. So Justin, you're a historian and a comedian.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. Moving on. Justin, we have some history on this stage. We used to do a show together, Caveat, where you played the dean of the university. Or, no, I'm sorry, some sort of administrator, the assistant to the dean.
Yes.
Yeah, yes, thank you very much. Moving on. And I played the TA. And I remember very clearly that there was one day in particular where we were doing, well, I mean, you know, you said it was a bit. I thought it was real, where you were giving a presentation on the statistics of bullying at the university, and that I brought those statistics to you, and you threw hot tea in my face. So, I mean, in your career as an educator and as an administrator, is that something that you take both off the stage into the classroom as well?
Oh, yes. I throw hot tea into the face of my students. So if you go to the University of Detroit Mercy and you enroll in my classes, you get a quality liberal arts education and a good scalding to the face for only $14,000 a semester. So
that's affordable. That's affordable. A lot of like really fancy teas these days will run you a lot more. That's great. Andrea.
Yes.
Political scientist, comedian, also circus performer.
That's true.
An extremely cool trifecta of things that are true about you.
The big 3 that people tread in. Yes, that's right.
So what is it like doing all 3 of those at the same time? I mean, how are you able to contort yourself into that? How are you able to jump through that many hoops? How do you keep all those balls in the air, Andrea?
Oh, God, those puns. Round of applause for Noah's puns. That is amazing. That was amazing. I do it, so really it's a good trick because I don't know if it's step 2 or what step it is in dealing with an extremist, but if someone is talking to me and saying like really hateful, horrible things, I just backbend away until they stop because they think that I've died. So
you could also just throw hot
you can all
tea.
try it, yeah.
Just throw hot tea in their faces.
Oh, I should have. That would have saved me years of training. I have to. Not that you didn't train for that, but yeah.
With the what is it? The Eye of the Tiger like training montage, and he's just going.
If it's caffeinated, like do you bring it to a full boil? Like there's a lot of ingredients that I need to.
Oh yeah, we only use the hottest teas at University of Detroit Mercy.
With like a citrus spritz too, I hope.
Oh yeah, you got to get the sting in there too.
Yeah,
you don't want to cheat the students.
Em, we, my co-hosts, as we mention every show, we are sort of out of things to ask each other. We've known each other for like the better part of a decade.
It's getting rough, guys. It's getting rough.
Yeah, so we went to graduate school together. So if
True.
I may ask, who did you vote for graduate student council president the year that I ran?
Was Katie president that year?
Yeah.
Did you run?
For the.
doing so well.
I mean, what part of my
Really?
platform didn't resonate with you?
I'm going to say that your campaigning wasn't up to par because I had no idea that you ran. I only knew you as Trivia Master, and you know what? I would elect you as Trivia Master any day.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's a hereditary position, actually, so I didn't have to be.
There we go.
All right, folks, I am very, very excited for this show. We're going to learn a lot, not just about, politics. We're going to learn about political science. And I'm really, really excited to learn what our guests have to say. And with our first political science-inspired story of the night, please welcome to the mic Dr. Lindsey Cormack.
Okay, what I'm going to tell you tonight is sort of what's been my life's work for the last 15 years. And I think for a lot of you it will be boring, but I hope that you're going to say, oh, okay, we can learn something. What I study, or what I've been studying for the last 15 years, is essentially political junk mail. It's the mail that you get that you throw away or delete as soon as it hits your inbox, but I think there's a lot to learn here. What this image is at the top is what franked mail used to look like, which is mail that members of Congress get to send to their constituents free of charge. And then at the bottom, you see Bill Clinton sending the first email from the White House on his little tiny computer.
It says, you up.
Yeah.
What's up?
I didn't know that was one of your impressions.
So back in 2009, I was at NYU, and I started a little project. And when I did this, I was a graduate student, and I didn't tell any of my advisors that I was doing this because I thought they'd say, you're studying junk mail, which is what happened when I told them 6 months later. They were like, wait, you're studying junk mail? And the answer is yes. So every member of Congress gets $1 million to $2 million in what's called their members' representational allowance, which means they get to tell everyone back home what they're doing on their behalf. And they get to say, like, I took this vote, I did this roundtable, I'm holding these hearings, whatever. They get a lot of money to do that. And back in 2009 was right around when Congress members started to use email more routinely. It's also when the rest of us did as well. So it's like this inflection point of like, okay, stuff is moving online in a big way, and it's sort of ruined our life ever since. It is the case that I thought someone has to have a database of this because these communications are taxpayer funded, they are in their official capacity, they're created digitally, they're disseminated digitally, and I thought someone has to have a database of this. I thought maybe that's the Library of Congress. So I called the Library of Congress and I was like, hi, I understand that we have these communications. Can you tell me about like how we're capturing them and what we're doing? And they said, yes, we have them all. And I was like, sounds great. And they were like, they are printed off. You are more than welcome to come scan them in if you'd like to make an archive.
Oh my God.
And I know, right? I was like, well, that makes no sense at all. They were created online, disseminated online. We should have an infrastructure that keeps them online. Library of Congress was like, maybe, but we don't. So in 2009, I started a project that said, okay, we're going to make one. And it is in existence to this day. And it has been the thing that I've done for the first 15 years of how I've been a political scientist. And it's taught me a lot, and I'm going to tell you what I've learned from it and what other people have learned as well. So it's called DC Inbox. And this is... And it's free. Anyone can go see it. It's dcinbox.com. You can go find every email that your member of Congress has ever sent. And this is one of the first ones from back in 2009. And coincidentally, Emanuel Cleaver is someone that Justin had as a representative back in Missouri, yeah? That's right. Yes. So this is him in 2009. And when I started it, I thought, oh, you know what? This will be easy. I'll write a script that goes and crawls through every House member's website, every senator's website, and we're going to sign up for all of these. But back in 2009, the internet was really weird, and so were members of Congress, and so really, it was so idiosyncratic. It was like whoever knew the most about computers got to set up their website. Sometimes it was a cousin, sometimes it was like other brother. It wasn't something where it was standardized. Now, they all pretty much look the same, but back in 2009, it was very different. This is what Emanuel Cleaver sent at September 3rd, so just a few days ago. You'll notice it looks pretty similar. He's still in office, the picture is updated, but he's doing similar sorts of things. In 2009, he was talking about how he wanted healthcare reform. In 2024, he's talking about lowering prescription drug prices. So that is the message that he's been doing for a long time. I also got to make this not just by myself, but I'm at Stevens Institute of Technology, which is a premier engineering and computer science institution in Hoboken, New Jersey, and I've had wonderful research assistants help me. Okay, so what I'm going to show you right now is a 1-minute video, and I understand that all of this is very small, so I'm going to narrate it. This is the DC Inbox interface, and I'm going to put in the search term rat. And the reason that I'm putting in the search term rat is the first time I came to Caveat to see this show, I learned about rats from someone who has a PhD and studies rats. And I thought, oh, I don't know how members of Congress talk about rats. Let's go find out. So I'm going to go up here. I'm going to type in rat.
How are you doing this?
And then it says, they don't talk about it that much. The red bars are Republicans, the blue bars are Democrats. But there's not a
Republicans
lot
are
of emails about it. When you search, you can do a few things. You can make a histogram, and then I'm going to show you, you could make a map if you want. You could make a pie chart if you want. There's 2 other graphs that don't really work, so I don't talk about those ever. But then you can also click through and see the HTML of the original. So I'm here, I Control F for rat, go find out when he's talking about rats. So here's where we are. He says, and I'll read it to you because it's small. The Biden-Harris administration is pushing to have the Texas kangaroo rat listed as endangered, designated over 600,000 acres of private property in Texas's 13th congressional district as a protected habitat. This is a blatant overreach by a woke administration that weaponizes the Endangered Species Act against hardworking Americans to advance their radical Green New Deal agenda. My amendment to block this federal land grab from happening was agreed to on the House floor. And this might seem strange, but I was so tickled that this was the first instance of rat because it does what a lot of these communications do. They're doing a lot of projection of let me hit these terms. It's not probably woke to say there's an endangered species that needs to be protected. That doesn't strike me as a woke priority, but that's a word that we see in a lot of these communications, typically from the right. Why I made this was that so people, not just me, could do things to learn about how Congress was talking about stuff. So this is a person who I didn't know until he put this up, but he'd been looking at words like inflation. And this is back in 2001. He was like, Republicans want to tell you an awful lot about inflation. And this is before the media started covering it. And so they're telling stories that you can figure out if you just look at how they're communicating. The New York Times also uses this. They did a story this summer that was talking about anti-Semitic tropes, while members of Congress were saying we don't like anti-Semitism on campus, but they're actually using a lot of the tropes, and you can do it by looking at the communications they send in their official e-newsletters. You can also do funny things like figure out who talks about red snapper, and it turns out in delegations where there's more red snapper, they're more likely to talk about it either as a protection or they had a good meal and it was on it. Yeah. You can also figure out who talks about Jesus Christ a lot, and it maybe looks like what you expected. So yellow is where yellow is where it's really dense. The color scheme goes to purple. Anyone who does sort of visualization data science, probably likes this color scheme. I really do. And it's weighted by how many members of Congress you have. So it's the per capita instances of when Jesus Christ appears in official communications from members of Congress.
Is the black on the map, are those the godless states?
Oh, now we're back in
One of
we're
them's
back
where
in
Tim
rat
Waltz
world.
is, so.
Those are states that never said red snapper.
Oh,
Yeah.
And then
Yeah,
those are
Minnesota.
states that never say Jesus Christ.
Yeah, so these are going to hell.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean,
Well, in Minnesota, they just
figure
say,
it
oh.
out. But you could do Lord, you could do Savior, you can do God, you can figure these out. They all sort of look like this, though. In terms of what we know, that's more than just funny pictures. We know that Republicans send a lot more e-newsletters than Democrats. Since I've been studying this, the House and the Senate have been split roughly 50-50. But if you look at who uses this free incumbent perk to connect with their constituents, Republicans do it a lot more. The only times that Democrats caught up was in COVID-19, when everything went online, and they were like, I guess we're going to do everything here instead of doing it anywhere else. There's a crash at the end there, and that's actually not a crash in communications, that's a crash in my system, and it took us 6 months to realize it. So yeah, I know. So for the last 6 months of the COVID-19 pandemic, the data is not that good because it was broken. Republicans also use far more images in this. So this is an image from an e-newsletter where you have bullet casings by the Constitution, like you do, we the people, to form a more perfect union, bullet casings. They also like to draw little pictures, and they did this a lot in the Obama administration. So this is...
That's cute.
Oh, yeah, I know, right?
Drawing, that's great.
This is Obama the King, and it's
The
not...
to-do list is amazing.
The what?
It says to do, executive overreach.
Oh, yes, yeah. Yes, yeah, that's hard to read. I'm glad you pointed that out. Yeah. And this is from Representative Paul Gosar, who is particularly hard in these e-newsletters. He has e-newsletters where he's artificially darkened Obama's skin color to kind of trick or confuse his constituents about things. But it's a really underregulated space. They also do things like this where I'll read it to you. It's a Biden at a whiteboard, and it says, tax you, send it to the Ukraine, then they send it back to me through Hunter. And these are not campaign emails. They are in your official capacity, how you send to your constituents, using your members' representational allowance to say, what am I doing on your behalf? I'm doing these. This actually isn't as bad as it maybe seems. This is from Rep. Corey Mills, and he has the U.S. symbol, which is usually an olive branch, and then arrows for peace and war. And he has a little scroll and an AK-47, like you do. And then they often will do this. Well, they'll re-put whatever they put on Twitter. They'll put it in their official e-newsletters, even when the stories are known to be not true, and then you say that doesn't seem like how that worked out. They do not issue retractions. They do not say oh, actually that wasn't what happened. And then this last picture I just include because I really liked it when it happened. This is everyone's This is everyone's favorite Congressman, Matt Gaetz from Florida. And this is his first Thanksgiving with his dogs. And he does a new one every year, but this was my favorite one when it happened.
Is he going to pardon one of them?
Yeah. Well, the thing that was interesting about him to me is he talks a lot about Nestor, his Cuban son. Maybe you know, maybe you don't. But Nestor didn't get into the Thanksgiving picture until last year. So he's been there for a while, but it was the dogs for a long time. Okay, so hold on. We know Republicans do all this. They use all the images. Yes. Democrats do this.
Oh.
This is how they communicate. They send walls of text, which is fine for me because I can analyze it and see word counts and frequencies. But if we're thinking about who's doing politics, Republicans use this tool to do politics. Democrats use this tool to tell you there's a veterans roundtable, or they pass some legislation, or whatever, and that's sort of the strategy that they tend to incorporate. The Grand Old Party also talks about Democratic words a lot more. So you can't see what these words are, but this word is socialist. This is the frequency in which the term socialist is in communications, and it's from 2010 to 2024. They also use things like when they talk about defund. So defund actually had this heyday in 2014, but it was all about like defunding Obama's efforts on immigration. It was about like, defunding things that he was doing to protect the environment, and then it comes back in 2021 and defund the police. They also say words like woke. Democrats never email and say, like, because of my woke agenda, I'm going to do this, but Republicans say it all the time, and they do it increasingly. And then the last one that I show you is critical race theory, where Democrats don't ever talk about critical race theory. They never defend it and say, like, oh, hey, this is okay to do. They never say schools aren't actually doing it. They just don't talk about it at all, whereas Republicans say it a lot. The axes for those is all like in the hundreds and 400s, so it's a lot more than they say rat. There are some other things that political science has learned from junk mail. One is that when members are scaled by the votes that they take, we kind of have a sense of how liberal or how Republican they are. But one of the first projects I did was say, let's scale them only on the votes that they talk about, only on the votes that they're willing to reveal to their constituents, and let's figure out how they present themselves. And what this is showing you is as the ratio of more base voters to swing voters happens in their district, they're more likely to look extreme. So they are reacting to who they think is reading this. They want to present themselves in alignment with their constituencies. This is also maybe not surprising, but women tend to be far more transparent. They are far more likely to tell you, here's how I voted and here's why. They do that both in terms of the variety of votes that they've taken, and they've done it repeatedly. Like they'll say, like, just so you know, here's how I did this. They do that far more than men. They also do interesting things where women tend to talk about things like families and kids, and when we talk about representation, we want people to have lived that life to legislate on our behalves. And so this is research that was done during the COVID-19 pandemic, which was great because all we're talking about is COVID, but on the adjacencies, women were talking about kids and families and schools and nurses far more than men were, and that was kind of consistent across parties as well. We also know, and this is one that I really liked finding, is the more COVID deaths that a constituency suffered, the more likely their member of Congress, regardless of party, was to say, take COVID seriously. So that's actually an indication of maybe good governance. If we lag the deaths by a month and we say, okay, you should actually care about this. There's also weird things about COVID, which a lot of us don't remember. I was in New York for all of this. But originally, the party that was saying wear masks was the Republican Party. The Republican Surgeon General said wear masks. And then it wasn't until May when Donald Trump said, I don't think you should wear masks, or he made fun of them, that it really switched. But for the very first start of the COVID pandemic, that's who was saying it. And we would not know this had there not been a database like this, which is why I think this is an important thing to have. So I've read more of these than anyone. I know so much about how members of Congress communicate, and it's led me to believe a few things. One is that legislators know that we do not know how things work. They will oftentimes say, like, this passed, and people are like, oh, great, we don't have daylight savings anymore. And it's like, no, it only passed one chamber. They say a lot of things where you're meant to think that they've done the end result, but they're not going to get it because another party controls the other house, or they control the presidency. They don't necessarily lie, but they do make things deceptively unclear in a way that is used to outrage people. They also make it very hard to hold politicians accountable because we don't really understand what they've done, and they muddy it up when they talk about it in different ways. I think that politics would function and feel a lot better if we all knew a little bit more. And so DC Inbox was my first effort to let people know how their politics were actually happening. And then my second effort is this book that I wrote that came out last month, which is How to Raise a Citizen. Thank you. And why it's up to you to do it, because it's hard to get it done in schools. Thank you for listening to me today.
So even though I'm a historian by training and a stand-up comic by tragedy, no, comedy's bad. I was actually trained by a political scientist, and every modern Africanist is also a partial political scientist and an economist. Are you nodding? Are you an Africanist? Yeah, you were nodding like very intently, like, yes, that is indeed true. I was like, oh shit, okay. Okay, so I'm going to talk about democracy, but in the African context. I'm going to talk about Jerry John Rawlings. First, this is in the Republic of Ghana in West Africa. You can see it located there on this handy map that I got off of royalty-free images. Fun. Okay, fast forward. If we want to go Ghana, West Africa has all kinds of connections to the Atlantic world throughout world history. This is Kwame Nkrumah, Ghana's first prime minister, which had the distinction of living in the United States for over a decade. And he was inspired by a lot of political movements he saw in the United States, particularly the idea of Pan-Africanism, the idea that Africa should be a federal republic that would rise up against European imperialism and sort of challenge like white supremacy on the world stage. Nkrumah led Ghana to independence after returning from the United States. And so for fun fact, his connections to Harlem, if you look at that black star in the middle of Ghana's flag, that's a tribute to Marcus Garvey, who actually in Harlem sort of created the idea of Africa being a single republic, right? So Nkrumah had a tribute to him. Nkrumah, of course, in challenging Western rule, led him to be a socialist and later communist, which led him directly into the global politics of the Cold War, which made him not only sort of, Ghana became independent in 1957, most African countries became independent in the 1960s and the 70s, so he went from the vanguard of African freedom to being thrust directly into the Cold War. He went from friends to the United States to directly coming into confrontation with them, especially after the United States funded the assassination of Congolese Prime Minister and Nkrumah protege Patrice Lumumba in the 60s. And what you'll see is that the further Nkrumah went to the left, elements of Ghanaian society that didn't agree with him going to the left and also didn't like himself declaring the country a single-party state and himself president for life, Ghana goes into a period of political instability where leaders from either the left or the right in the military seeking assistance from the Soviet Union or the United States take over because civilian governments are weak, which kind of leads us here to Jerry John Rawlings, this charismatic-looking gentleman down here. By the time Jerry Rawlings takes over, though, there is no Soviet Union really to go to, right? By the time you're getting to the late 80s, America is emerging as the preeminent global power. Here you go. You have the Berlin Wall falling, and then you have George Bush declaring that there's a new world order, right, that the United States can declare war in Iraq without any sort of, or take a military action in Iraq without any challenge from the Soviet Union that's crumbling. So what did the end of the Cold War mean for Africa? So the IMF and the World Bank are the only games left in town. This is before China rises as the world's second largest economy, right? So African leaders can't borrow from the Soviet Union anymore. And they made structural adjustment economic policies and holding free and fair elections conditions for borrowing. American leaders and European leaders all of a sudden had no use for dictatorships in Africa, so they were like, now you can have human rights with a little bit of capitalism as a treat. So African leaders that may have had all kinds of different political programs had to abandon them and become good Western neoliberal capitalists. Jerry Rawlings talks about this in this documentary clip where he's doing an interview with Diane Sawyer.
Africa finds herself in a catch-22 situation, you see. She better watch what she says here and there, or else you don't get that aid or that assistance, etc., etc. What kind of blackmail is this? But this is another fact of the things you people don't know and don't see. And it's a painful thing for me sitting here to have to be making such admissions. But these are some of the truths, the hard facts, my dear.
So that means Africa had to adopt neoliberalism. This is a word that gets thrown around a lot. Neoliberalism is not liberalism. It is actually conservatism. To basically sort of shrink it down, if you wanted to associate who created neoliberal ideology on the world stage, Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher. That's right. Neoliberalism is actually conservatism, the idea that the free market is the solution to all of the world's problems. And you saw a lot of political scientists make this proclaimment at the end of the Cold War. I don't know if you've ever heard of Francis Fukuyama. Fukuyama. He said that the end of the Cold War marked the end of history, that we were on a steady march towards capitalism and democracy, something that the last 10 years of world history have not supported at all. So what did African leaders like Jerry Rawlings have to do? Why did he call having to go to the IMF and the World Bank blackmail? Because he was actually inspired by dependency theory that said that African countries were made dependent on the West. But by the time he comes to power, it's the only game left in town. So you had to clean up your public finances by reducing government spending. You had to cut public sector employment. You had to devalue your currency. Trade liberalization, you had to reduce your tariffs and open up your economy to the world. And then you had to privatize public enterprises, right? All those fun state companies that Nkrumah set up under his socialist government, you have to sell those off. So a good example would be Ghana Telecom became Vodafone for only $800 million. And if you know anything about the telecom boom in Africa, that ended up being like basement prices for the state company. So what were the results, right? Yeah, public education deteriorates, right? Because you have to introduce school fees rather than taxing people for education, right? Instead of expanding your health infrastructure, this is a bad time for Africa, right? 1980s, if you're cutting your budget for healthcare spending, HIV/AIDS is getting ready to hit, so this is gonna form a perfect storm for African countries, right? And then instead of making economies grow fast, most African economies actually stalled. And then what you see is economic inequality enter into Africa. You can trace directly to the 80s and the 90s. These economic reforms lead to this growth of this African 1% that you're kind of starting to see. So the divide between the rich and the poor gets much, much larger with the cuts to social programs. So if you wanted to think, as a political scientist, what is the physical representation of structural adjustment? One is, look at this cool revolutionary with his aviators. But then look at this cool, democratic, neoliberal with this nice business suit with Bill Clinton applauding. Yeah, Ghana goes from a country that's courting the Soviet Union to becoming the darling of the Western world. Aid money starts flowing in, and Ghana actually is the only country that would be visited by African country that was visited by consecutive American presidents except for Donald Trump. I wonder why Donald Trump did not go to Africa.
That picture looks like Bill Clinton is saying, "You up again."
Yeah. I will tell Jerry, you up. Fun story about this. Bill Clinton, on his official state visit, refused to take off his wool suit to show his bare shoulder in 90-degree Ghanaian weather. So he put his kente cloth over it and nearly passed out during his speech. Okay, so the idea is that democracy would rejuvenate civil society, right? That by democracy, all the groups that military dictatorships had shut out, such as your journalists, your churches, your trade unions, all of those people would get back involved in society. Here's a fun chart showing you the way civil society is supposed to work. Lawyers, all those things, even big companies get a say, right? Some democracy cons. Some African leaders were actually against democracy in Africa. Some examples would be countries that have too many political parties. For instance, does anybody pay attention to South African politics? It's the weirdest thing I've ever said as a comic on stage. Y'all check out South African politics. If you go back to the transition to democracy in South Africa, you'll see Nelson Mandela and then 75 other parties. It means the ANC has never lost in elections, which, if you want to look it up, there's a guy named Jacob Zuma. He is the African Donald Trump. He destroys the country's economy. He's a complete buffoon and those things. But he didn't lose because he was part of the dominant party. So that's one argument that people made against too many political parties. Then political parties can be vehicles for ethnic conflict, especially when people from different regions vote for the same party, right? So Kenya's had instances of election violence. And then some people say democracy doesn't lend itself to fast government action. As someone like Jerry Rawlings said, I am not communist nor capitalist, but I know what it means to be hungry, right? So that was his justification for his early dictatorship. And democracy might be more of an imposition than an organic reflection of people's desires, right? A lot of people in Africa, as you've seen, as people turn away from democracy, they go, it was cool being able to vote, but we can't eat that, right? So democracy pros, they generally allow for constitutional rights, like free speech and the press and assembly is very nice. They allow minority groups to have a voice in government, even if it's a minority party, right? In South Africa, there's a party for everything. There are actually still, I am a white racist that didn't leave from apartheid, and I have a political party. My name is Steve. You can see that on a South African ballot. Separation of powers is great, term limits are great, and the rule of law provides pathways to fight corruption. So look, Jerry Rawlings is actually part of a huge shift towards democracy in Africa. Check out how it corresponds directly towards the ending of the Cold War. tons of countries going from autocracies and dictatorships into something either free and fair democracies or democracies that are quote unquote free and fair. And Ghana today remains a two-party democracy. This is from the recent election, and as you can see, even though you have like a balance between the two parties, and Ghana has actually become a model of capitalism and democracy across Africa, which is the reason why even recently like Barack Obama visited the country. So if you want to read more about Ghana's transition and about how all of these things also led to the creation of the most viable African-American tourist market, where you can see African-Americans going to Ghana, and you can tell that they're the African-Americans because they have the African clothing on. While the Africans have a Manchester United jersey and Nikes on. You can check out my book, Pan-Africanism in Ghana, on the internet.
Let's do a little poll since we're talking about political science tonight. How did you feel about the trivia? Okay. Did I do that poll scientifically? Political science? Okay. How could I have improved it?
Well, first of all, you need secret ballots.
Okay.
And everyone is going to have to register multiple months in advance.
Right.
And then we're going to have to kick them off the voter rolls so that the Republicans can win.
Got it. Okay. So let's do this again. Everybody close your eyes, and on a scale of 1 to 10, and everybody just shout out your number, how did you feel about the trivia? Okay, go. Okay, how did I do this time? Data scientist Andrea.
Worse, because you can just hear the person next to you, and that's probably the person whose opinion of you care about the most.
Right, okay. We've all learned
Polls
a
are
lot.
hard, guys.
Dictatorship.
Well, we're going to learn... Can you guys hear me? Okay, cool, thank you. Our guests did the same trivia that you did. Let's find out how they did. Lindsey, Justin, Andrea, M. How do you feel like you did? Do you feel like your answers will poll well, or were any of your answers politically incorrect?
Yay.
Yay.
Nice.
The ayes have it. I found
okay.
it quite challenging, but I have confidence in my co-conspirators.
100%.
Excellent. All right, so let's go through the trivia. We have question 1. What species submerges some of their young in a substance called royal jelly in order to prepare them to rule?
Bees.
Said bees.
Yeah.
Okay. What made you think bees?
I think someone just knew it.
We all knew it, I think. Yeah.
All right, great. Yeah,
I was like, it's the Windsors, but no one was amused by that.
Some of them look like they're still in it. I feel like William has that sort of like goopy.
There's a
look to
sheen.
him, yeah.
There's a sheen.
Before we descend further into a new conspiracy theory about the royal family, what was the answer?
It's honeybees.
Hey, nice.
Specifically,
Is bees a correct answer, or is it not specific enough?
it wasn't multiple choice. It was just honeybees, not bee. Sorry, fuck me. All
Okay,
right.
so we got it wrong.
Yeah, bees is fine. I'm so sorry. Bees is fine. Honeybees was the specific answer. This has been studied most in the honeybee that I feel like most people are familiar with, like honey production, which is Apis mellifera.
Oh, yes.
Yes, everyone knows.
Apis, what?
Mellifera.
Yeah, that one.
Don't, Justin, you know this. Don't act like you don't know. Don't
I don't
put
know the
yourself down
Latin.
for this crowd. So basically what royal jelly is fed to both future queens and future workers, but workers are also fed something after about 3 days called bee bread, and it mixes in like pollen and some other stuff. I know, it's kind of like let them eat cake a little bit. Basically it was thought for a long time that there was something in the royal jelly that as the queens continued to get it, that's what was like changing their development and turning them into like morphologically different queen bees.
I would like it.
Yeah. Well, people do try to use it because there's some sort of mystical significance people think to it that it potentially because of the story, potentially because they, like everything else, it is attributed without any clinical data to be like an anti-inflammatory or some sort of beauty project. It can hurt you, apparently. It's like people have like really severe allergic reactions to it. So I would not advise doing that. But one interesting thing about the royal jelly before we move on is that it was actually found relatively recently in like bee research, which has been going on for, not only in like formal scientific research, modern times, but people have been, maintaining and breeding bees for honey and for beeswax and stuff for thousands and thousands of years. It's actually that there's an extra thing that is put into the workers, mixed royal jelly plus this like pollen and some other stuff, that basically the presence of that somehow makes them not continue the process into becoming a queen. Yeah.
Is that what was put into the COVID vaccines to keep us suppressed?
That's what it was. That's why we're all workers, something, multiple jobs. I don't know. We'll get
Drones.
there. We'll search DC inbox. We'll
They
figure
say
out
you're a
what the-
sheep. I'm friends with a couple people that went down that. Well, internet friends with it. Anyway.
All right, question 2. True or false, Thomas Jefferson kept a ram on the front lawn of the White House that was known for brutally attacking passersby, prompting a local newspaper to write, quote, "Unbridled liberty is productive of naught but evil." Is that true or false?
We said true because it felt right. That's all.
So you're saying everyone here agrees with that sentiment? That's true.
You should sell that as a T-shirt.
Yeah. Caveat: unbridled liberty is productive of naught but evil.
But over an octopus, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we said true because it just felt right.
That is exactly right. The answer is true.
Yeah.
Okay.
TJ.
Yeah, somebody gave Thomas Jefferson like some sort. I think it was like a Scottish ram that was like very famous for its wool, and it was like during a time of like embargo against Britain, and or maybe they were embargoed. I don't remember this part. But,
Leave it to the historian, Noah. If you
yeah,
could.
actually, if you want to hop in.
Oh, early American history is not my thing. Thomas Jefferson in more ways than one.
Right. Basically, like, there's a story about how maybe he wanted to see if they could start up this like wool industry here, but basically it just ended up being so violent and just attacking like groundskeepers, other people that work there. It culminated in a 9-year-old schoolboy that was crossing through the White House's front lawn on the way to school because it didn't have a fence at the time, and that was just like a normal way that he got to school. He was attacked and he was killed.
Oh my God.
And so. Our government has gotten slower and slower over the years. A mere 5 months later, they removed the ram. So that's an example of government responding swiftly to serious problems. I want to quickly say, so Thomas Jefferson University in Philadelphia, their mascot is the Rams.
Oh,
for
no.
completely unrelated reason. And it's that Thomas Jefferson University merged with Philadelphia University, which went through a couple different name changes, but was originally founded as the Philadelphia Textile School. And at the time, their mascot was the Weavers. And at a 1958 basketball game in which the opposing team's cheerleaders were making fun of the Weavers' mascot with this chant: "Knit 1, Pearl 2, Textile Yoo-hoo."
Yes.
So the
mascot
Weavers
was
should
changed.
have recommandeered that as a cheer for themselves because that slaps.
Right?
That's so clever.
This is absolutely true. Well, I mean, from what I read, it's true.
not even
The mascot
negative.
was changed the next day to the Rams for no particular reason.
Missed opportunity.
A missed stitch, even.
There you go.
Question 3. The German term Hackordnung was coined to describe how dominance hierarchies are established and maintained in chicken societies. What is the English version of this term?
Pecking order.
The pecking order is exactly right. That's correct.
Because the Germans are known for nothing if not Ordnung. So
There you go.
So in a landmark 1922 paper from the Norwegian scientist Thorleif Schleldrup Ebbe,
Beautiful.
I think I nailed that actually.
your German is very good.
It was Norwegian. So
Look, still stands.
yeah, thanks. And this is a really, really good quote from this paper where they were really more like diary entries than scientific papers are today. Anyone who thinks that the inhabitants of a chicken yard are thoughtless, happy creatures with a daily life of undisturbed pleasure, ... is thoroughly mistaken. A grave seriousness lies over the chicken yard. I want to read another quote from this guy in a subsequent paper. This actually was an extremely important, a landmark paper in sort of behavioral psychology. Another quote, I think this is a sort of a follow-up study. Despotism is the basic idea of the world, indissolubly bound up with all life and existence.
Wow. Again, these T-shirts are writing themselves.
Yeah, I know. It's great. But basically what this is, in the pecking order, which you may know from this term, it's sort of essentially what the term has come to mean in other contexts. It is essentially if a bird can peck another one into submission, then it is ranked higher than that bird in, quote-unquote, the pecking order. And that basically is a way for them to sort of sort themselves into a particular hierarchy for access to food and mates and stuff like that. It ends up being really important for any sort of chicken farm that has more than 10 chickens, because above that amount if the sort of pecking order sort of relationships get too complicated, and then there's a big increase in like aggressiveness and things like that, and you get a lot more like fights. So
Well, and that's when we start betting and making money.
that's right. Yeah. That actually is the thing that people bet on. Yeah. So there are other animals that have this. It's sort of broadly known now. The pecking order as a term has sort of fallen out of favor. Now they're known as dominance hierarchies more generally, and it's sort of studied in all animals really, or at least those that have like a known sort of like social, I guess gregarious is the word for that. But they did this really interesting study in pigeons where the pecking order turns out to be very heavily influenced by just how heavy the chicken is. I'm sorry, the pigeon is. And they were able to very rapidly disrupt the pecking order among pigeons by giving them little weighted vests. And basically, as a consequence, that they became like a more dominant pigeon very quickly. And then when the vest was taken away, there was a coup d'état.
Oh.
That's good.
What? Question 4, which one of the following is not a collective noun for the corresponding animals? Is it A, a coalition of cheetahs, B, a party of scrub jays, C, a court of kangaroos, D, a despotism of tyrant flycatchers, or E, a parliament of owls?
We sort of did this by elimination. We said we know the owls won.
Okay.
We think the court of kangaroos is true. The party of scrub jays, maybe. We originally thought it might be the despotism of tyrant flycatchers, but then Andrea pointed out that cheetahs are not pack animals, so you might not ever have a coalition of cheetahs. You might just have singular cheetahs. So we went with the coalition of cheetahs is not real.
I really, really like that reasoning. It's incorrect. Oh, you guys.
Threw me under the bus there.
I twiddled my little evil fingers together as I was writing this one. A despotism of tyrant flycatchers. What are you talking about? That's insane. Backstage,
like you were trying to
they were deliberating, and for a while they were going to say D, and they were like, a despotism. That's more like a single ruler. Why would that be like a group name? And I was just sitting there like.
Like, how broad is the cheetah coalition? They're like, I envision a world
Exactly.
where a meek rat can run.
You mean a meerkat?
what?
Hang on, that's the
A
woke
meerkat?
cheetah agenda.
You said a meek rat.
Oh, yeah, I don't know about science.
The meek rats and the meerkats.
Yeah.
They're
It is.
inclusive. It's good.
It is not. It is so basically all but D are real. D, a despotism of tyrant flycatchers I made up. It's not A. Unfortunately, it's not a coalition of cheetahs. Unfortunately, they never managed to form a government because cheetahs never win.
Oh.
I should have put that one later because the next one sucks. All right. A party of jays was founded by Supreme Court Justice John Jays.
Boo.
Shut up. Okay. All right. A parliament of owls is really interesting. I was like, where does that term come from? And it's one of the more well-documented sort of group animal names. It's still a little unclear, but it's thought to be probably the reference that made it like a more popularly known was in Chronicles of Narnia. There is a parliament of owls, and they meet at night to debate the issues of the, I was going to say day, but it's night. And they're always complaining that like all the other animals are meeting at really weird times because they meet at night. And that is thought to be a reference to a Geoffrey Chaucer poem called The Parliament of Fowls. And it was basically this sort of like dream poem about like someone who's trying to figure out a problem and goes to sleep and then dreams about all these different, basically three man eagles. three male eagles are like debating in a very formal style which one of them deserves the hand of a female eagle. And then all of the it's really weird the language it uses, basically like the lower tier of birds, so like all the other birds in nature get involved, and it like separates into like all these different factions, and they're having like a parliamentary style debate, and basically there is no resolution, and the guy just wakes up and it says he's unsatisfied. So it was basically C.S. Lewis making a literary reference to a Geoffrey Chaucer poem, and the truth is we don't really know where it comes from before that, and I am left unsatisfied.
I mean, he wrote a lot of tales. Some had to be duds.
True.
You know?
Yeah. Emphasis on the can'ts, or I don't know. Okay, so question 5. All the mayors of Rabbit Hash, Kentucky have belonged to what species of animal? Now,
Meek rat.
What do you? Meek rats?
Coalition of cheetah.
That is correct. No. So what did you think?
Well, yeah, we figured you were messing with us, so we were like, well, it can't be rabbit, even though now I'm wondering if it was. As I say this, my instincts are all wrong. Someone else say it.
Well, we originally started with human.
Okay.
Because we were like, human is a species of animal, maybe it's
is.
human. And then we went to dog because on occasion dogs do get elected to mayoral positions.
Also a species?
And rabbit hash isn't big. Sometimes the dog might be better at governance than Earl.
Oh. What an interesting thought. So what is your answer?
I mean, we
so
wrote
excited.
dog.
I think it's dog, yeah.
Okay, so you put dogs. Who else put dogs? What else did people put for this? Human?
Beaver.
Anybody put beaver's fun? Anybody put rabbit? Oh darn, it was dogs.
Yeah!
The answer was in fact dogs, and I'm interested, Justin, that you mentioned that like they've got to figure that this random dog is better than a human. That's exactly what happened. There was an election in Rabbit Hash, and the first mayor of Rabbit Hash was a dog named Goofy Boardman Calhoun, who was running against a human named Crazy Clifford.
The candidate with the most dog-like name was the human.
Yeah, he was the canine date.
Yeah, there you go. Amazing.
Sounds like Crazy Clifford is like a murderer or a sex offender. And they're like, we gotta go with the dog on this one.
Well, I mean, I'm certainly not going to publicly say that's the case about Crazy Clifford, but he did report his own name as Crazy Clifford, so really all bets are off. I did Google him, and he had a very full life of lots and lots of interesting stuff. Too much to go into here, way too off topic. And if I'm saying that, you know it's not, doesn't belong here.
Yeah. Go home and Google Crazy Clifford like immediately.
Yeah. So I think the current mayor now the tradition is just having dogs. And I will say this, it was like a fundraising thing. So it's basically an unincorporated town. They have no need for a mayor, that's what they say. But it was to basically, you paid $1, which is technically a poll tax. And that raised money for I think in this case it was the raising money to rebuild a big church in town. But since then they've just had dog mayors. I think the current one is named Gwyneth Paltrow.
Yes.
And then Gwyneth Paltrow succeeded Lucy Liu, but L-O-U. So I don't know. They're I guess trying to go off actress
What a
names.
zany town.
Right. Wilbur Beast, yes. Is the current one. That's right, yeah.
What kind of dog?
What is the education level of this? Just curious. I want to know about the social economic indicators
Also,
of a
is
town
there
that keeps voting in animals.
They have full education, K-9 through 12.
Is there a human vice mayor? Is there someone whose boss is a dog?
I don't know, maybe it's
Chief
a
of
smaller
staff?
dog or something,
Yeah,
I don't know.
okay.
The state of the economy, my fellow constituents, is roof.
Okay, so question 6, true or false, honeybees vote on future nesting sites by attending a dance battle between location scouts and then headbutting the scout whose location they prefer. Is this true or false?
We said this was true, and we said it fast.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, we did.
What made you think it was true?
Well, I think I didn't read the whole question. And I was like, oh yeah, honeybees dance, I saw the documentary. And it's been only now as you read the second line, I'm like, oh, I was thinking about the mating thing, so I've been wrong on every single one, so.
So I did that too. I was like,
Yeah,
real
we said
dance,
true.
We got this in the bag. And
Real
then I'm
fast.
like, oh, I don't know about the headbutting.
Yeah, that's the right reasoning, because it is false, and it's because of the headbutting, and for very specific reason.
Damn our modern day attention spans.
So y'all may know about the waggle dance. Okay. Have you heard this term? Yeah. So the waggle dance is something that bees do, or specifically honeybees, and other species have different patterns. But they do this thing where it's like a particular angle with respect to basically direct up and down means it's between the hive and on a direct line with where the sun is. Any sort of angle off of that is telling you where the direction is relative to that right angle of plane of the opening of the hive to the sun. And then the amount of time they spend kind of waggling their butts, basically the length of time that they do that while they're walking on this diagonal corresponds to a certain distance, flying distance away. And the vigorousness and enthusiasm with which they waggle their fuzzy posteriors corresponds to how excited they are about that particular resource source. So whether it's a new nest or a source of nectar and pollen, etc. And what will happen is you'll get dozens of different scouts that have gone off and they've found really excellent, what they think is like an excellent source for resources or whatever. They'll come back and they'll all be doing this dance, saying different directions, different distances, and different excitement levels. And then all the other bees in the hive will stand around and watch. And they'll decide, based on how excited they are, based on how close they are, other priorities, which one they want to follow. Other ones will start doing it too. And all of a sudden you've got like a big crowd doing one dance, a smaller crowd doing another, and maybe like one or two that don't have anybody going their direction and they're still hanging on. This is where the headbutting comes in. Because what the headbutting is it's called the stop signal. So when there's one bee that is just hanging on to an unpopular destination, persisting in doing their unwelcome waggle dance so long after the consensus has been has moved on, that's when the other bees will like headbutt them, physical violence, and then they'll like give like a short buzz with their wings to be like, you have to stop, and that is like a signal that makes them stop doing that and sort of move on.
This is like a primary.
I was gonna say,
This is a caucus. This is a caucus or a primary.
It was associated. Basically, in this article I was reading, they like talked about it being very much like the Iowa caucus. Yeah. Question 7. Which one of the following animals has not been observed to engage in democratic decision-making? Is it A, cockroaches, B, pigeons, C, African buffalo, D, red deer, or E, cockatrices?
Okay, first responding to your question with a question. Is a cockatrice a bird? Anybody know?
A cockatrice is not a real animal.
I hate you.
We were literally backstage. We were like, "Is a cockatrice a lady cockatoo?" Like,
You know what? I'm glad I didn't vote for you.
And I'm going to break something to you. I didn't run for a student government. I was just putting you on the spot.
Great.
Cockroaches do an interesting thing. There are several factors. They're found to actually, they like really hate light, and they hate, I guess, being like too crowded. But there are these experiments where if you like give them options, they will like somehow be able to very like relatively evenly separate into 2 different rooms. So like they're basically doing a count of how many are going one way, how many are going another way, and then apportion themselves to like maximize their safety and resources, which is a bummer. Pigeons are able to do this. Like apparently even the lower ranking pigeons in like a flock or something get a say, even though it may be weighted differently in the direction the flock goes. African buffalo do kind of a similar thing where I think it's the female African buffalo, they when they're ready to get up, they like for the herd to move, they like get up and stand and just sort of face a particular direction. And when enough of them sort of reach like a critical mass of these like animals getting up and facing a direction, they just sort of go those directions. Cockatrice is like a mythological sort of like lizard bird thing. I think maybe it's something to do with like basilisks. Like I think it's like an egg, like if like a chicken egg, maybe that you like a cockatrice sits on.
Hold on.
Something like that.
Hold on.
It's
You
like
said ancient Greek?
Yeah.
As in the inventors of democracy? How do you know? How do you know?
Dang, that's a good point. I guess give him the point. Okay. Yes. So question 8, final question for the night. After the untimely death of the democratically elected Maximus Mueller I, the 3-month-old Maximus Mueller II was unilaterally installed as leader in perpetuity. This is a quote. Within the SoCal-led Inland Empire, somebody knows about California geography.
I thought that was a typo.
I tried to throw in a little like typo disguised hint. What species, not that really helped solve it, but what species was Maximus Mueller II?
Okay.
So we thought this had so-called.
Yeah.
That was the sort of pun.
Because it wasn't capitalized. Okay.
Yeah,
And we
I'm
thought an
sneaky.
inland empire was in a zoo.
The Inland Empire is basically like sort of like east of the suburbs of LA. And right? Is
not
that
what we
sort of
thought.
fair? Yeah, it's sort of like, depending on exactly how you define it, it's kind of like from LA all the way to the state line, or just sort of like certain areas of other counties. Wow. Yeah.
So this is not about the Holy Roman Empire.
No, but I was trying to give that vibe.
Okay.
the vibe was given.
Yeah, the vibe was given. Was the vibe received? What species was it?
We wrote tortoise,
Tortoise. Interesting.
Yeah.
and I just feel like the audience is not impressed by that answer.
What did the audience put collectively? Meat rat. Yeah. The answer was dog. Yet again.
Wow.
So
In perpetuity? I got
Thank
bad
you so
news
much,
for
Chelsea.
them.
So Maximus Mueller I was elected in another one of these sort of fundraising things. It cost $1 to vote, and it raised money for the ARF, which I thought sounded like a revolutionary organization. So I was gonna like put it in there as like they were installed by the ARF, but it's like the Animal Rescue Foundation, ARF, yeah. Basically, unfortunately, about 9 months into the Max the First's reign, died. And then to finish out his term, a 3-month-old puppy, they're all golden retrievers, Maximus Mueller II was put in, and then basically they just decided that he was going to be mayor for life, and that was about 12 years. And subsequently, there's been a Maximus Mueller III. I just want to say about Maximus Mueller, I got to just say Max II. Apparently his cousins were also made his deputies, which is an example of nepotism.
You can't turn it off, can you? Like you just
No,
this is just your life.
The thing is, I just have a respect for the rule of paw.
I am ferocious at you.
Nice. Yeah. Well, that's that answer. There are lots of dog mayors. A lot of the reasoning y'all had used backstage that didn't quite make it out here was really, really good. And they've raised a lot of money for different animal rescue facilities and churches in various small towns across America, so I guess good. Thank you all so much for coming. That's about all we have for you tonight. If you enjoyed this show, I hope that you'll follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter at FaxMachinePod and go listen to, rate, and subscribe to our podcast pretty much wherever you listen to podcasts, Fax Machine. And also come hang out at the after party. If we have to get out of here, we'll go to a bar nearby. Lindsey, is there anything you would like to plug?
The book that I just wrote is the one that I'm the proudest of. It's How to Raise a Citizen and Why It's Up to You to Do It.
Yeah.
So if you have someone who needs like a bar mitzvah gift or a new baby gift or a wedding gift or whatever, I think it works.
Sweet. And they can follow you at How to Raise a Citizen on Instagram and at DC Inbox on Twitter. Justin, anything you would like to plug?
If you want to see me teach about African history, come to the University of Detroit Mercy in the northwest corner of Detroit, Michigan. If you want to see me do comedy, go to justinwilliamscomedy.com. And if you send me an email, I'll come to your house.
And one more time, this is Justin's book. About like a week after I met Justin, I really weirded him out by reading it.
It's weird. When you read, like, do you get weirded out when somebody reads your book and you're like, no, for me, I'm like, that's weird.
I don't know. I met Justin. He'd written a cool book, and I was like, I'm going to read that. And I got it, and it was a really excellent book. I learned a whole lot, and I told Justin. He was just like, what?
Yeah, I called him a square. What are you doing reading books, you nerd?
Yeah. Andrea, anything you would like to plug?
I am doing an election series here at Caveat in October. It's called How to Win an Election, and it brings together the very best political and data science about different topics around how to get, what research suggests is the best thing to do around getting out the vote, fighting misinformation, changing someone's mind, something else important and something else important. And it's going to be great, and you can go to electionshow.vote to get tickets. That's on Sundays at 2:30 p.m., which I'm so excited about.
Hell yeah.
Because we can get drunk in the daytime and go to bed early. It's going to be really fun.
Wake up hungover, forget to vote.
Now that the election's on a Tuesday, you'll be fine.
My hangovers are multiple days these days.
Okay, take it easy.
You can follow me at Arts and Sciences. You can follow him at
_EM Costa.
And you can follow our erstwhile co-host, Rob, who currently has a very small baby. Hi, Rob. At Whiteboard Rob. And you can come to this show, which is every third Thursday, right here at Caveat at 7 p.m. We are very, very grateful that y'all have come out. Our next show is Thursday, October 18th at 7 p.m. So you can join us for a science comedy show and science trivia showdown loosely inspired by spooky, scary animals. Yeah, it's going to be really cool. So come see us then. Thank you all so much for coming and have a great night.
Thank you.